Hey guys! So this is probably going to be a very controversial video, but I'm going to do this video first of my 2015 flops, books that I just didn't vibe with, books I didn't like or were disappointed in, and then I'm going to do a favorites video to try and redeem myself because there are many more on that list than there are on this list. So without further ado, these are the books of 2015 that I read that I either gave 1 or 2 stars, just for some reason did not get along with, I guess. So yeah. It'll be a happier next video, I promise. The first book that I want to talk about is one of the first books that I read in 2015 as far as like new releases go, and that is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. And I know I'm probably gonna get a lot of crap for not liking this book, but I don't think I'm alone on it. There are a lot of people who kind of had meh feelings about this book. This book just, it looked so good, there was so much hype surrounding this book, and it just kind of fell flat for me. It wasn't what I wanted it to be, which I know you can't necessarily judge a book that way based on your own personal expectations, but it was built up to look like and sound like a very cool high fantasy X-Men story, and it just kind of read like a typical YA dystopian. It was very predictable in my opinion. Granted, I will probably read the sequel just to kind of see if it redeems itself, but this one was just kind of a meh for me of 2015. The next book that I want to talk about is Vanishing Girls by Lauren Oliver, and I think I need to learn my lesson with Lauren Oliver and just kind of stop reading her books. I have probably read, I think I've read everything that she's written, and every single time I pick up one of her books, it's to try and like her as an author, and I feel like that's kind of pushing too much. So far, everything that I've read by her, I haven't been very impressed with, and I know a lot of people will disagree with that, but I don't know, her writing and my taste just don't mesh well, I guess. But my main issue with this book was the fact that it is a story that has already been told many times over, but it is almost an exact duplicate of one of my favorite books. And it's also one of those stories that once you know the twist, you can kind of see it coming in other books that are trying to accomplish the same thing. But I was just highly disappointed that this is almost identical to another book that I read, and I really liked that one a lot more. And it was just very unoriginal to me, so I just didn't care for this book. The next book kind of bums me out that I didn't like it, but it is Beautiful Sacrifice by Jamie Maguire. And I have read all of her books so far in this series, and I really liked them. I felt they started out strong, and I think as the series is going, I'm starting to lose interest in it. Like, I think she just kind of needs to give it up with this series because it's starting to be very repetitive. All of these books are spin-offs of her Beautiful Disaster series, or duology, I guess, and it's the stories of all of the guys' brothers' love stories, and they're starting to all be exactly the same, and it's getting to the point where I kind of don't really care for the characters. Like, if they didn't end up together, like new adult romances are supposed to end up, I probably wouldn't even care. So that kind of gives you an idea of how I felt about this. It's a very short book, and it took me a long time to get through it because I kind of had to force myself to read it. So unfortunately, this was a flop for me. The next book that I just didn't really care for was Counting by Sevens by Holleen Goldberg Sloan, I believe? Yeah. This book, I talked about it in one of my wrap-ups in that I feel like I'm not at a good age to read it. If I were a lot younger or a lot older, I probably would have appreciated this book a lot more, but I didn't get the characters, I didn't connect with them, I didn't really care for their quirks, and it just was not a believable story. I think if I were younger, it would be way more whimsical and less realistic, and I could accept that, but the way I approach books like this, I expect certain things to come from it, and it was not a believable story in my mind, and I was really looking forward to it, and the next flop kind of bums me out. I was so excited for this, and it's Armada by Ernest Cline. Ready Player One is still one of my all-time favorite books, and I just had really high expectations for this, and the first half lived up to it. I feel like I should give this book an even like 2.5, 3 stars just because the first half was so good and I loved it. I laughed all the way through it, but it really lost me by the end, and I know I'm not alone in these thoughts. I know a lot of people felt the same way about this series, or this book companion, I don't know. He tried too hard to throw too much into this book, and I feel like Ready Player One had its appeal just because it didn't take itself seriously and there were jokes throughout the whole thing and references throughout the whole thing. This one, I feel like he tried to make too emotional and heart-wrenching by the end, even though you know what's gonna happen. I don't know. This just wasn't as exciting as I wanted it to be, and it makes me really sad because Ernest Cline, I will probably still read everything by him, but it was just a letdown. And the last book that I want to talk about as far as disappointments was The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. This book was like a joke to me, and I know a lot of people have read it and are like changing their whole lifestyle to go by her technique and learn how to organize their lives and be a more tidy person. It's a self-help book. It's very short, but reading this book, well, I listened to this book, thank God, but the entire time I was trying so hard to take it seriously, but there were definitely certain parts where I was just like, whoo, really? That's what you think people should be doing? It was just, in my opinion, it was a very unrealistic approach to how to organize your belongings in your life, and it was not very feasible for anybody who had a job or a social life or pretty much anything other than staying in your house and making sure every single thing is in its place at all times. And I disagreed with her technique a lot, which I know shouldn't really ruin the book for me, but I couldn't believe a lot of the stuff that she was preaching in this book. Yeah, it was kind of a laughable experience. So yeah, not so much on that book for me. So that's honestly it for 2015. I definitely read a lot of books that were kind of an in-between star rating for me, like in the 3 range, but those 6 books are the only books that I rated under a 3, and they're the only books that I was kind of disappointed in that came out in 2015. So I think that's a pretty good ratio of that versus my favorite books of 2015, and that video will be coming up very soon, and it's going to be a very excited, rambly video of all of the amazing books that came out. So I feel like there's a fairly good balance in hate versus love this year because the love side was way heavier. So that's going to be it for me this video. What books did you guys hate or just were disappointed in or just didn't mesh well? I'd love to talk to you guys about it and see if any of you agree with me or if I created some controversy here. But I will see you guys next time. Bye.